deserve to have the best physical, mental, spiritual, Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis.
Another episode of Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis. I'm your host, and happy Easter. Let's go right to the point. Like, hey, let's. I hope you guys had a great Easter. Hope you celebrated, and a lot of cool things for the kids with the Easter Bunny and all that jazz. And of course, spiritually with acknowledging the fact that He is risen. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about, decisions and discipline and temptations, really is kind of where I'm going with it, and kind of more or less bring in a bunch of different variables that we're always going to encounter. Obviously, with Easter just happening and knowing and believing that that Jesus really did rise from the dead. And, 3 days after He was crucified, if you believe that, discipline about that, then you have to be, consistent with that and in that truth and that believing that. And of course, that's what we do celebrating Easter every year is acknowledging the fact that He is risen and He has, proven everybody wrong back in those days. They all thought that there's no way impossible. He's not the Lord. He's not this. He's not that. Well, He was, and He is. So I'm a believer, and I definitely I'll give a lot of credit. Clearly, all my credit for every bit of success I've ever had in my life to Jesus, and knowing that He is the reason for our Savior and our living and so forth. But He does give us free will to make decisions, right? So that's where we're going into this whole concept of being disciplined and making the proper decisions. We have lots of decisions on a daily basis we can make, a lot of temptations, a lot of things that can persuade us otherwise. So being very disciplined and passionate about what it is you're doing on a daily, your daily routine, your daily life. Is incredibly important. And so I think that, me as, I always refer back to my highest level of success in my lifetime so far is my football career. And that was many moons ago, but to get there was incredibly, challenging, but I had to have a discipline for that. So when we come back from the short break, we'll dive right into being disciplined and understanding the decisions and the temptations that we'll have throughout our lifetime. But here's a short message from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
At 3, we want to give you the true health benefits that you're paying for, something you can feel and see a difference quickly. Each product is packed with powerful plant-based nutrients that are combined through a proprietary curation process and then infused with innovative cellular absorption technologies to ensure the nutrients absorb into the cells for maximum wellness. The quality and effectiveness of our life-changing products is evident by their approval to be included in the well-known Prescriber's Digital Reference, or PDR. PDR has been a valuable resource to the medical doctors and providers in the healthcare community for decades. Our products are GMO-free, clinically studied, and third-party tested, all designed to support health and proactive wellness for everyone.
And welcome back. How do you deal with your daily, everyday decision-making process? That's a great question because a lot of people kind of just go with the flow. Obviously, there's people in the professional worlds that that are very disciplined and regimented. Obviously the higher levels we get in life and successful with our businesses, our jobs, our responsibilities, really, as a parent, as an employee, as an employer. I mean, you name it. There's all kinds of ways that we find ourselves in positions where we have to be disciplined and kind of make decisions. And sometimes they're tough. It's tough to make certain decisions. And, we live on a timeline. We do here in the natural world of us human beings. We live on a timeline, right? So we have, you can't go back in time and change those decisions. And so that's why it's so important to understand the importance of the decisions you're making on a daily basis. And I've always been, I like to think that I'm good at this as far as thinking before I speak. Because some people, may not have the ability to do that, and they have no filter, and they just say things that are on their mind without thinking about the consequences of what they were about to say, what they said, and that's definitely something in my mind that don't. I want to be careful with what I say, and get the impression that at least I'm making a proper comment or decision. Of course, with going back to decisions, being very disciplined about these decisions you have to make on a daily basis. You have to really, evaluate these decisions. You have to understand the consequences. I've talked about that a lot in previous episodes. That the consequence. Now, consequence doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It's just the result, really. Ultimately, I always talk about with kicking. It's the consequence of you doing a certain thing in your form could make or miss the kick. Make is a good thing, right? So you want to make sure that the consequences that you do are really based on the things that you've decided to do, before the consequence happens. So that's what I'm saying is like you really got to know and kind of project a little bit, or maybe like think a little bit in the future, like what could happen. So that played a role in my decision making. Now, again, we're not all perfect. I've made horrible horrible decisions financially, decisions on investments. Man, if I could go back in time and change those up, man, I would, of course, we all would be millionaires if that was the case. We all go back in time and correct those decisions we lost a bunch of money on, or whatever the case may be. But again, we're on a timeline. There's no turning back. We can't go back and change the decisions we made in the past, but we can learn from them, right? And that's just a process of life. And so your life is really revolving around daily discipline in what it is you're wanting to do and whatever passion it is you have, but also the decisions that encompass those, and the temptations that come around too. You can think about obviously I revert back to kicking all the time because it's my go-to. But with kicking, I developed a passion because I had fun doing it. I enjoyed it. It was challenging. But my decision to keep doing that was because of those things. I was passionate about it. It was fun. But I had to also make decisions on whether I was going to go out with my buddies that night. I'm thinking back in high school, maybe even college. Am I going to go to this party, or am I going to go hang out instead of go to the weight room, or go, do my training or kicking or whatever the case may be? I chose, to focus on my career. Of course, that was my career at the time. I didn't know how far I was going to go with kicking, but my point really is the fact that, making those decisions back then molded me into the person I am today. And so that's a really big thing to think about, because now big or small decisions, it doesn't really matter. They can be small decisions that turn out in the long run to be really impactful in your life in a negative or positive way. And the idea behind those is really, making the right decision clearly, but we don't know. We're human. We can't project and predict really the future. So you're kind of in limbo. But again, that's where we learn. We learn through our past mistakes, the decisions that we made in the past that might have something to do with today's decision you're about to make. Like, well, I remember when I made a decision back then, that didn't turn out real good. Well, let me do a little bit more research. Let me figure this out a little bit more. It makes you a little bit more cautious. And again, going back to those temptations, there's a lot of temptations that could take you away from it. I was just talking about kicking, of course, temptations of going out and hanging out and having, parties and going to parties and hanging out with my friends instead of doing my training. Those were temptations, right? You think about your wellness, your health and wellness, food. My gosh, how many temptations do we have out there with food? And those temptations are making decisions for us. It's really easy. Like, especially I feel bad for people. I don't really want to be in the position where I'm in an office constantly working, and I live my entire life working in an office, and then I retire, and then get some health problems, and then pass away like 5 or 10 years later after my retirement. The more I hear people's stories, and the more I've experienced people's stories. I mean, I know there's coaches out there that I can give you an example. Frank Gans, what an incredible NFL special teams coach. He was like the GOAT. Like, he was one of the best special teams coaches out there, right? I had the fortune of I was very fortunate, we'll put it that way, of being able to spend time with him on an NFL team. The Jaguars actually signed him and hired him for the special teams position years ago. It was my last year, I think, in Jacksonville, 2001. Now, granted, I didn't have a very good year, but that wasn't Frank's fault. It was mine. I had a bad attitude that year because of contract issues and so forth. But Frank Gans, man, I got to tell you, he was pulled out of retirement. Tom Coughlin pulled him out of retirement to come back and be a special teams coach. Frank Gans loved coaching so much. He was a grandfather. He had wanted to, one day retire, get all the coaching in that he needed to do because he was incredibly passionate about it. He loved the guys, he loved the team, the camaraderie. He's got great stories, or he had great stories. And even after he left the NFL, after coming back with the Jaguars, I think it was only a couple years he spent here, but he went back to college football and coached a little bit in college. And so the day that he retired, obviously before I left Jacksonville, he had told me, like, when I retire, I'm going to retire pretty soon. I just definitely want to spend a lot of time with my grandchildren. And I was like, man, that's awesome, man. You've lived such a great life and you've experienced so much. You've got so much knowledge. And, he eventually, fast forward, after he retired from college football, he retired from football in general, literally. He thought, okay, well, I'm going to take care of my body now. I've had these knees I've got issues with. Went in for a knee surgery. And Frank Gans passed away on the operating table during that surgery. And so, and I don't know how many months, it was maybe a couple, 2 or 3 months after he officially retired, the time that he wanted to spend with his grandchildren. And I was just lost for words. Like, how do you deal with that? That is just, now again, I brought that point up to kind of mention the fact that I want to live my life and, be successful in business and do what I can to help others. That's obviously something I've always talked about. But I don't want to be, so tied into something so much and so long and then have no really life after football. Because if you think about it, we've got a limited time on this earth as humans. And I think life is precious. You think about all the lives that are unfortunately aborted. You think about, the kids and people that, die for mysterious reasons, whatever the case may be, but life is precious. I'm a firm believer in that. Having a life is a gift. It's an incredible gift. And we are the lucky ones. We're the ones that are alive right now, living life, experiencing things that we have to experience in life. We are lucky. We are incredibly lucky to have this experience. And then one day, obviously, the goal is to live with the Lord up in heaven and do our things up there and just and be forever grateful for that. But getting into the whole concept of, back to the point of being disciplined and having decisions and temptations in life, you have to pick your battles. And I think that there's a lot of times when we're tested, and maybe that's the devil coming in and trying to tempt us into doing things. And I've always talked about knowing the difference between right and wrong. And again, I think it has a little bit to do with having the ability to think ahead. If you have the ability to quickly think about the consequence of this decision versus that decision, you can kind of, and it gets, experiences too. You have a lot of experiences in life that you've learned from. Better. You know what the decision is going to be. You've already kind of got a good idea and a good answer, and you more than likely will make the right decision. But there are times when you don't, and you can't fault yourself for that. There's a lot of experiences that you maybe not have had the chance to learn from, and this is a new decision you got to make that you've never had any experience. So yeah, you might want to do some due diligence about whatever decision you're going to make, but in all encompassing reality, to be honest with you, you have to understand that there are going to be consequences to whichever decisions you make. And so that discipline part is really kind of why I want to really focus more on the discipline part, because those other things, the being, having decisions and temptations are kind of, the outsourcing of, being disciplined. If you're disciplined, you're able to make good decisions. If you're disciplined, you stay committed. If you're disciplined, you don't buy into the temptations because you're disciplined. I was disciplined with kicking, for many reasons that I've already mentioned. I won't go into anymore. I do talk a lot about my kicking career, but that was the pinnacle of my success. And I always revert back to that because it has molded me into the person I am today. And it's taught me a lot. And I just reiterate the fact that, not, very, very small percentage of people are able to play at that level of football. And the experience in itself is incredible. I always have the memories. I can't go back and play, which I did maybe 3 years ago. I played a professional football game, but my body was not very happy with me. That was that arena football game. I played one game for the Jacksonville Sharks, and I was like, man, I don't know why I did it. It was fun. Okay. But my body was like, no, nope, don't do it. No more. You're too old. So I was like, okay, lesson learned. Right. So thinking back to, the concept of lifelong decisions and discipline and what you're going to be doing. and this, the passion that you have for whatever it is you're doing in your life. But whether it's your work, your career, your job, whatever, there's always the other thing too: your fitness, your health and wellness, your nutrition, your diet, your everyday living, your parenting skills. You have to make. Oh, well, that's a big one. Let's talk about that one. When you're jumping into being a parent, in which I was at the age of 23. My firstborn, Mason, was born when I was 23 years old. That was a very, very quick start to being a parent. Plus, I was in the NFL, so talk about being stressed. I got a newborn, and that was fun. I mean, that was fine as far as having Mason as a young child, and then 2.5 years later, had Michelle, my daughter. Now they're both, Mason will be 30 in June. My gosh, I'm getting old, but my point is, it was a blast raising those kids. Of course, my wife at the time was, she put more time and effort into the kids because I was working, of course, and that's just kind of part of the deal. And but again, you learn and you learn how to be a parent pretty quickly. You have no choice. You shouldn't have a choice. There are people out there that think that they have a choice and just give up their children, which I just can't believe that people would do under the circumstances. I can understand that. We won't get into the whole that argument, but you understand where I'm going with that. When you're again, I told you life is precious. When you got your children, you're able to have kids. Let's talk about that too. A lot of people can have kids, and they would give anything to have kids, and so they kind of have a sore feeling for the parents that have kids that keep giving them away, or doing it for other reasons. But my point is really that you learn on the fly, and again, life is a journey, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to get advice on decision making, and it helps with being disciplined, because if you're a disciplined person and you don't have a lot of pride, you're not real prideful in yourself as far as thinking that you know it all. Which is humbling, for men especially. We all think all these men, all us men, we don't read directions when we're putting stuff together. I've already gone over that before in a previous podcast, but you understand my point is, like, we constantly are doing things on our own. We're prideful, but you have to be humble, and you have to kind of accept, advice and so forth. It makes you a very disciplined type of person once you get that understanding and you learn and So in everyday life, the things that you're doing, you're constantly going to be making decisions. But if you don't have the discipline first, those decisions are going to be all over the place, and you're probably not going to make very good decisions if you don't have discipline to follow up with. Actually, the discipline is the initial. That's your origin, and then you got the decision making and the consequences and the temptations that kind of follow. So discipline happens first. Yes, you can say passion's there too, but being disciplined is more than just going through life and just making some decisions here or there. Being discipline is really knowing where you're going, having a goal, having a future idea, things that you plan, like things that you're really wanting to do, and follow through. I mentioned earlier making commitments. Being disciplined has a lot to do with keeping your commitments. You can't be a committed person and a disciplined person. I'm sorry, you can't be an undisciplined person and a committed person at the same time. You know what I mean? If you're going to be disciplined, you got to be committed. You have to commit to what you're saying you're going to do. Now, there are times when you may not, you may go back on that decision, or that thing that you were trying to decide whether you're going to do or not. Yes, there's always those opportunities to learn from the things that you maybe not experienced before. So, but being disciplined, you're going to have the consequences. You're going to have to understand the consequences, and you're also going to have to understand that there's a process, and you're going to have to know that you're learning things as you go as well. And so, again, I'm not a professional. I'm somebody here kind of giving my experience and what I've learned throughout my own personal life. And believe me, I've been in positions where I've had to make important decisions, and it's tough. Very difficult at times, and I understand that if you're not disciplined, if you're not knowledgeable, and again, that's life experience. I think the older I'm getting, and this is again my opinion, my thought process. The older I get through life, the more I learn, and the more disciplined I can actually become, because I've kind of learned through experiences, like real life experiences. And that's what I think people sometimes have a fear of doing. They don't want these real life experiences. They want the easy way. They want someone to share what they need to do, and they don't really work hard for what they're trying to accomplish. And it's a very difficult thing when you're not experienced or knowledgeable. and you're trying to accomplish something that you're, maybe you're a decision maker and whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, and you're put on this in the position where you're controlling, other people's, thoughts, not controlling their thoughts, but just kind of controlling where they're going with their decisions, and you're assisting them. Maybe you're an employer. Well, yeah, if you're a leader and you're an employer, you definitely have to make good decisions. And people who are in the leadership roles typically probably have made pretty good decisions throughout their life. Maybe they've made poor decisions too, but again, they've learned from them and they've had the experience of that too. So if you've got the experience of knowing, what it is you're passionate about and what the decisions you've made in the past and what you've learned from them, and then you're teaching others as a leader, that's an incredible opportunity for these people who are learning this to learn and grow and become someone of themselves, just like you are and were, and as the time that you were growing up and learning the things that you were learning. But getting more specific with regards to just health and fitness, because this is Zealous Wellness. We talk about a lot of things, a lot of different varieties of topics on this show, and a lot of them have a lot to do with everyday life scenarios. What do you do on an everyday life, every day? What is your routine? What is it that you're going to make decisions on? Your nutrition, your fitness, your mental decisions, your whether you're going to think good or bad about a situation. It's all up to us, really. And I had a buddy, my good buddy, good friend of mine that passed away during COVID. I always remember, and I still will never, calling his number and getting his voicemail. He'd always say the last words that he would say on his voicemail was, "Make it a great day." And I'm like, man, I love that. Make it a great day, because that's really true. Like, you make yourself have a great day. You can make yourself have a bad day too. Very easy to do. So if you understand the concept of making yourself have a great day, you're gonna feel better about decisions you're making. You're gonna be positive about certain things. And so making it a great day is going to be full of decisions, full of temptations, and full of discipline. You got to be disciplined to make it a great day, right? You have to kind of, you have to choose to make it a great day. Yeah, the things are not always going to go your way. Believe me, I have told you all kinds of stories about my road, to the NFL, my road after the NFL, through my, retirement. I was not prepared for retirement. I look back, going back to what I was saying before. I wish I could have gone back in time and prepared myself for retirement, because I didn't know it was going to happen when it did. I kind of thought, well, maybe it's maybe time to retire because of my back and the issues I was having. But of course, I got to a position where I wasn't kicking as strong as I thought I should be to compete in this and at the level. And I didn't want to let my teammates down. I didn't want to let the coaches down, the organizations down, and the cities down. I didn't want to let those people down uh, by pure selfishness, by me saying, "Oh, I still want to play. I still want to make the money, but even though I know I'm not kicking great, I'll just take it as long as I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go out that way. I didn't. I'm not. I've got more pride than that. I want to be prideful and respectful to myself and others in those situations. And so that's what I did. I retired when I thought the time was right. But you know, I forget where my train of thought was, but with regards to just kind of the mindset of getting to that level and being disciplined about that, there's a lot of roads that I could have taken, but it taught me a lot. And thinking of my everyday life and routine, I had to be in shape, and so I'm telling you. That's why I'm telling you, it molded me to the person I am today, because I've had my back issues. I've had my back issues where I stopped working out after I retired. Oh man, last thing I want to do is go to the weight room. I want to, not that I wanted to get out of shape and all lazy and everything, but I just didn't want to work out. Well, guess what? I put on a bunch of weight. I got lazy, and guess what? My back started hurting. I'm thinking my back's going to feel great because I'm not kicking the football anymore. Boy, was I wrong. I was wrong, because I got lazy and I got a little chubby, a little overweight, and my back started hurting. Was like, this isn't right. So there was probably 2 or 3 episodes in my life that I kind of did the whole yo-yo thing, where I was kind of, lazy and got a little heavy and thought, oh yeah, I remember now my back is, starting to hurt again. So this must be, because I'm out of shape and lazy. So I got to get my butt back in shape and not be so lazy and start eating better. Right. So again, going back to those consequences, you have consequences for those temptations, those Twinkies and those chocolate bars that I'm just a huge fan of chocolate. I've got a sweet tooth like you wouldn't believe, but I have to be disciplined on that. I have to control that. So understanding the concept of dealing with everyday life decisions and knowing that, back in the day when I was playing football, that was my life. and I like it. I liked being disciplined and in shape. And I have a kicking academy. I'm still coaching kicking, so clearly I like that part of it too. And I like being in shape. I like that part of it for many reasons, but mostly, I don't say mostly, but they're the one big reason is to keep my back healthy and in shape and all that. But I want to live as long as I can. I'm a huge fan of anything anti-aging and health and wellness. And again, I'm always I've always told you guys this. I feel like I've been put in a platform where I can actually share and help people. I believe I've been put on this earth to help people. And so with regards to my concept of being, humble and wanting to learn a lot about myself and how to be the best me that I can, I've gone through lots of discipline. I've gone through lots of decisions and temptations and things like that. And I clearly have told you that I've not always made the right decisions or the great decisions. I've failed many times in life. But again, I don't treat failures as failures. I treat failures as opportunities to learn. And again, going back to this whole concept of the discipline, being disciplined is a process. I think the older you get and the more you grow and the more knowledge you have, the better discipline you can be because you have those experiences. And you know better. You know what the right decisions are going to be in situations that you've been through before. So life is full of experiences, is full of knowledge. Soak it in. I'm telling you, we are on this earth. It's a gift. We are the lucky ones. We are so lucky to have the experience of being on this earth, experiencing the things that we are experiencing, and then also learning from those experiences. Whether you've failed by those experiences at first, you're going to learn from them and hopefully not fail on them again or with them again. But y'all understand, just going through daily lives it can be a struggle. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people, that may be on the negative end of life. They don't like life in a sense because it's so hard. Well, it's hard because maybe there were some decisions you made in the past that you didn't quite learn from. Maybe the temptation was too much. Maybe you are experiencing the same temptations over and over again. It's just too easy. Quitting is easy. I've told you guys that for many times. It's very simple. I mean, laying in bed on days that I need to go to the gym, man, that is so easy. Especially if I don't have anything going on or whatever, I could easily lay in bed, but I just don't want to because I feel like I've committed to working out. I've committed to being, healthy and fit as much as I possibly can. Now there might be some circumstances, but my point really is the fact that it's very easy to quit. It's very easy to eat that Twinkie. It's very easy to reach over. I'm looking at candy right now, by the way. It is, Easter. There's all kinds of peeps laying around here and some Sour Patch Kids and things like that. But I'm being disciplined. I'm stay away from those things. So, but it's very easy. Those temptations are very simple to do, and it doesn't take much. Like, oh, I want to have that. I want to take care of my sweet tooth. Okay, that's fine. I'll do that. Oh, just this one piece of candy. Well, that one piece of candy turned into 10. Believe me, I've done that before too. So temptations and wrong decisions happen to all of us, clearly. But in the long run, that's really where I'm going with this whole point is the being disciplined and understanding, knowing how to be disciplined takes time. As a kid, clearly there's not a lot of discipline as a kid. You're kind of just living life, going through the motions. Parents know the answers. They're going to be able to take you places. You don't have any control over, where you're going, what you're doing. You're just doing what you're told. And so there's really there's no discipline really. And then you reach an age where you start having to become disciplined, and then you kind of learn what discipline really is, and being disciplined. It's a commitment, and it's a long-term type of thing. And I think the longer we live and we experience, the more things that we experience throughout life, the more disciplined we can be. Now, I say can be because people sometimes won't be disciplined just because, again, they dive into these temptations way too easily. So again, knowing the difference between right and wrong, it's really black and white, honestly. If you think of what's right and what's wrong, there might be some gray areas in some decisions you're going to make on a daily basis. I understand that. But when you're talking about some serious decisions, it's black and white. When you want to put, $30,000, $100,000, $500,000 into an investment, you better make sure that you're doing the right thing. Now, I'm not saying that I've lost that much money or gained that much money, but I've had experiences where I've lost a good amount of money in what I thought was a good investment. Yes, I learned. Okay, great. Well, I could have done something different next time, whatever. But my point is really that you understand discipline. You understand it by your life experiences and how you go about. Again, it always has to come down to the decisions. You have decisions to make every single day, probably thousands of. I'm talking about little decisions. Whether you're going to go to the bathroom an hour later, or whether you're going to eat that piece of candy an hour later, or even at all. So there's all kinds of different things that you'll have the ability to do right or do wrong. And again, sometimes they're gray areas, so it's not really a big deal as far as making right or wrong decisions on simple things. But the more important things that will mold you as a long-term disciplined leader, will say. And again, people don't need to be. You don't have to be a leader. I mean, I remember growing up as a kid. I always rode my BMX bikes around with all my neighborhood buddies, and I was never the one in front telling everybody, "Hey guys, follow me. Let's go to this trail today, or let's go over here to off of 32nd. Let's go in the woods today." I was never that guy. I was always following those all my buddies. I never really wanted. I'm cool with whatever. That's why another reason why I didn't want to really take the lead. I don't really care. I'm fine. I'm having fun anyways. Regardless of where we go, I'm going to have a blast. And so that was really kind of my mindset of growing up as a kid, and not necessarily feeling like I had to be a leader, but being in positions in my life since being a kid, I found myself as a leader in a leadership role. So I'm thankful that I've been able to be at least somewhat disciplined, or mostly disciplined, when it comes to those important decisions that I had to make as a young kid growing up, and even as an adult. So, you can always, look back and be happy about those decisions. And again, the decisions that didn't turn out to be great, you can always learn from. It's not that you're going to be happy about them, but you just, understand that you don't want to make those decisions again if they were wrong. So it's all about enjoying life, having fun. And, again, just having that time to spend and knowing that you're doing the right thing and helping people out. That's a big thing for me. I'm telling you, just being available for people. And I'm not a selfish person. I want to make sure that people are happy and enjoying life and making the right decisions. And if I can help those people based on what I've experienced in my life, then that's even better. So with that said, I want you guys to have enjoy a great week, a great Easter week, we'll say, and pray lots and have fun, and enjoy your neighbors. Love your neighbors as yourself. Okay. So until next Monday night at 5:30, we will definitely see you guys again that time. And again, happy Easter for all y'all out there, and enjoy the week. Take care.
Thank you for watching Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time.